You know, one of the weirdest things about trying to make a video is that sometimes you have to start all over, and sometimes you have to start all over more than once, and the reasons are always different. For instance, the first time I started doing this video, I was about a minute and a half in when I said, nah, I'm not necessarily happy about the direction this is going, and I stopped. The second time, I was 16 minutes in, and all of a sudden, the company that I have hired to cut my lawn suddenly was cutting my lawn, and it was so loud I said, no, that's not going to work. So this is the third time, but the third time hopefully helps me to focus a bit better so that maybe I can keep it somewhere around 10 minutes, but I'm not sure. Let's find out what goes on. So here's the thing. I find myself in one of those places, and I know I'm not alone, even if some of the reasons are not the same, where I'm in a bit of mental distress. I'm in this bit of mental distress because of what's going on in the United States. I don't care about any other country because I don't live there. There's nothing I can do about that. However, I live here in the United States, and there's nothing I can do about most of what's going on here either. The one blessing I have, and I'm using that term lightly because I'm not religious, so don't see it that way, but the one blessing I have is that I live in New York State. So there's a lot of things that I'm going to mention that I don't have to deal with that are happening in other states. And that is messing me up a little bit because I've been an independent consultant since 2001. Since 2001, I've been an independent consultant. And back then, in those early days, anything I got, I'm ready to hop on the car or hop on a plane and go there. And I never worried about any of that. And now I'm realizing 20 years later that there are some places I don't want to go because I don't trust the state or any of those communities for my safety. And I don't want to be one of those people who is walking around with certain types of weapons to try to protect myself, knowing that if I did try to protect myself, I'm the one who's going to take all the heat. Y'all know why. So I'm going to mention a whole bunch of things here that are either bothering me in some way. Some I'm against, some I'm actually for. There aren't going to be many I'm for, by the way. But these are the kind of things that are happening across the country that are kind of bothering me. And the last one's going to be a little weird, but go with me. So here's what I'm thinking about. Things that are bothering me, that I'm hearing about, that I'm reading about. Here you go. The stuff about woke hate and white nationalism. By the way, it's the exact same thing. People who spout this stuff, try to say it's not the same thing, it's the exact same thing. You're trying to kill history of black people, Latino people, the native folks, the folks who were here before everybody else. You're trying to kill all of that. And you're trying to say, well, we're trying to make the world a better place for everybody. No, you're not. No. I think that probably 30% of the people in Florida would love to have every black person leave. Leave their money there, but have them leave. Them, Texas, Mississippi, Georgia, there you go. So, we got that. The elimination of non-white history. Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. CRT is not in school. It's never been in any elementary schools. It's never been in any high schools. It's been at some colleges. But you're looking to try to kill that everywhere. Don't even know what it is. So there's that. Book banning. Book banning has become a really big thing. Now, what's funny about that is back in the days when I was younger, 60s and 70s, they didn't necessarily have book banning. There's just books that they didn't get. They didn't bring in because libraries were kind of a different thing back then. Now things have opened up a lot more, but they're trying to make it so that everybody has something that they can get a library. But now they're trying to ban a bunch of books. And what's funny is that some libraries are banning the Bible and folks have lost their minds. And let's face the fact here. There's a lot of nasty stuff that happens in both the Old and New Testimony. So, New Testament. But there's a whole lot of bad stuff that happens in there. And if you set the law saying, well, we're eliminating books because of this, almost all of it is in the Bible. So, you got to ban it. So you're mad at a law that you passed, and folks are living up to it. Gun control. Lack of gun control. New York, we have at least some kind of gun control. We would have more of it if the Supreme Court, the fake Supreme Court, that's my terminology for them these days, hadn't decided that, yeah, everyone deserves to own a gun, no matter what your age is, no matter how bad the thing is, everyone decides to own a gun. Everyone should own a gun. And we're still trying to fight that because, you know what, we got New York City, we got Buffalo, we have Rochester. Those places have had active shooters kill people. Luckily, it hasn't happened in Syracuse yet, but the guy who killed all those people in Buffalo actually had Syracuse on his list, and we're closer to where he was. So, lack of gun control is a stupid thing. They had a mass shooting in Texas a few weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the governor, because it wasn't any of his people, decided, nah, that's not a big deal. That's no reason we should, ban guns. Uvalde, wasn't his people. So no, we're not going to do any of that. There you go. Child labor. Oh my goodness. For all these fake people, all these liars talking about, oh, we've got all these illegal immigrants coming across the line and they're doing all this stuff and they're bringing in all this fentanyl and all this other kind of junk, whatever, and they're taking away jobs from everybody. Then we find out about 6 months ago that a lot of those folks who came across with their kids, they had set up ways to get the kids away from their parents, send them across the country to work in factories and doing some other things, doing very dangerous jobs, paying them way less than the minimum wage, which they were sending to their parents somewhere who had no idea where their kids were because they wanted basically free labor. So when that came out and everyone started getting mad at that, now there's states like Iowa, they're the first one, others are coming, where they're saying, okay, now we're going to lower the age where people can decide to let their kids, let their kids work in dangerous factories in dangerous conditions. And oh, by the way, if anything happens to those kids, they're not covered under compensation. It's the parents who have to pay for anything that happens to their kids. And if their kids die, then the family's got to take care of it. There's no responsibility on the companies. Wow. Yeah, that's a family value thing, isn't it? And then we have the thing about the non-vaccinated people. So there's a lot of people who are coming out against the CDC saying, look, you put all these things into place and now things have changed and it turns out that we didn't have to do all that stuff to begin with and you are now punishing us and now y'all should go to jail for it. You know what? We still had over 1 million people die. I think it was closer to like 3 to 5 million people who died from COVID. We had a lot of people in the Syracuse area who died from COVID. It happened all across the country. Information did not come fast. That's just how science works. You don't one day say, well, let's find out how COVID works. And then 2 days later, okay, we know how it works and this is how we're going to stop it. That's just not how science works. So you have to take chances. You have to take things where you say, okay, we need to protect everybody because y'all know it was everywhere for a while there. It was moving along fast. So to now sit there and say, see, we never had to do it in the first place. My thought was, okay, Mr. Family Values, Miss Family Values. How many kids do you have in the house? None of y'all are going to take this. If any of your kids die, and a lot of them did, and a lot of the parents did also, and a lot of grandparents did also, you're still going to go back and say, well, that was just a fluke. That was not a fluke. More people died in 1 year from COVID than they did from anything else over a 20-year period. So, that was just a stupid thing to go off. Me, I took the shot. Now, I didn't necessarily trust the shot because the orange guy had a lot to do with it, forcing these pharmaceutical companies to come through with something fast. But I took it. Why? Because I had my mother living with me. And I wanted to make sure that nothing was going to happen to her because of me or because of anybody else. So I got the shots and I got my mother to get the shots because I thought about somebody else rather than just me. I thought about my family and I thought about my friends. Y'all didn't care about none of that. And if your kids died, you're going to say, oh my goodness, I should have took the shot. And that was happening all over the country, where there were a whole lot of people saying, oh, goodness, I lost my daughter here, and I lost my son, I lost my husband, whatever. I should have taken the shot. Yeah, you should have taken the shot. You should have worn the mask. Even if it turns out that that particular mask would not necessarily have saved a lot of people, there's still some people who got saved because of that. That's just me. Now, this one I'm going to mention in two ways. The thing about pronouns and the new terminology. I admitted in another video where I don't understand all the pronouns. So, that's one thing. I'm trying. I just find other ways of saying things if I need to. Thing is, I don't know any trans people. I don't know. I think I know a few gay people. They're all women, but I only know a few. I used to know a lot more people, but back in the day, back in the 80s, you didn't have all these terms. So I didn't have to know all that stuff. And now I find myself seeing certain words and having to go to Google to look them up to find out what they mean. That's just one thing. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that. If those were folks I was meeting more often and they wanted to be called by a certain pronoun, fine. No one's going to beat you up if you don't know what those pronouns are up front. Demi Lovato. I was listening to an interview that she did with this guy named Jay Shetty a couple of years ago where she was using the they, them pronouns. Well, now she's back to she and her because, she changed her mind. Okay, so she got to change her mind. That's just how life is. You try to accommodate people based on how they feel as long as it's not going against you. They're not condemning you for anything like that. So that's my thought. But some of the new terminology, I just found out what gaslighting meant. I did not know what that meant. There's just a whole lot of new terminology that is freaking the heck out of me. It didn't used to move that fast, and now it's just going everywhere. That's kind of scary because a lot of times I don't know what anyone is saying. I don't know what it means. Luckily, I'm mainly here at my desk, so I can look things up, and then I learn what that is, and hopefully I will remember it, but if I can't, I can always look it up again. But that's frightening. Then we have what I'm just going to call the hate or the distrust of people who are not like you. Now, here's the thing. I don't hate or distrust white people in general. I really don't. I mean, where I live, I'm the only black family on the street. I'm it. I've been here 22 years. So, there's no hate. There's no distrust of any people on the street. Matter of fact, in my community, where there's probably maybe 2 or 3% black people, or any other minorities, I'm not worried about my community. Now, my community also did 89% of the population took the shots. So I live in a kind of progressive community. And in the area, we do pretty fine. The crime rate is down in the city of Syracuse. Crime rate is down in a lot of places throughout central New York. There's some areas where it's not. Crime is down in New York City a bunch. And yet there's still all these folks talking about the crime rate in New York City. Yeah. Ask Kevin McCarthy and whatever that dude's, Jim Jordan, about the crime rate where they live and where they are the representatives for their state. Ask them about their crime rate. Do a comparison with New York City. You're not going to win. But, having that immediate distrust, there are a lot of videos of folks who we call Karens. And the men who sometimes they call them Karen, sometimes they call them Larry, whatever, who seem to decide that they have the right to tell anyone who's not like them that they should go back where they came from. Or different stuff like that. And a lot more people of color aren't taking that quietly. And I'll admit that I should be ashamed of myself because I laugh every time some of those people get what they deserve. I do. And I feel a sense of pride, like, yeah, you're not sitting there taking it anymore. And that may sound mean, but you know what? One of the videos, this woman decides she's walking out and she spit on this black woman, and the black woman lost her mind and started beating this woman. And I'm sorry, I won't do it again. No, you're not going to do it again because now you're on the ground. You don't get to do that. There was another one where this woman came out of her house with 2 hammers and she's beating on this woman's car, hitting the car with the hammer. And then she comes after her again because, the woman's filming. It's like, what's wrong with you? And then she did something else. And then she decided to bring out the water hose and spray the woman. That was when the woman lost it. So the woman handed the camera to someone else, went over there, grabbed the woman by her hair, put her down, kind of, holding, what's wrong with you? And called her all kind of names and then threw her down on the ground. And I laughed. And the guy who showed the video said, I don't condone violence, but she was under attack. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on these days. And the final thing is AI. AI is one of those kind of things where in my world, it seems like it just came out of nowhere. But then I started realizing that this is something that they had been talking about for a good long time, at least 2 or 3 years. But I really hadn't paid much attention to it until basically the last 4 months or so. AI is somewhat scary. I mean, yes, this is going to be science fiction-y of all things, but basically the Terminator movies were based on AI. In other words, these are smart computers that have basically taken over and talking to each other, and then they decide, we need to protect humanity because this is what they've got us to, and this is what we're going to do. So, that's what the Terminator movies were for. That's what, my goodness. You know what? I had a whole bunch of movies that I was thinking of, and they're all popping out of my head. But in essence, War Games. For those of you old enough to remember the movie War Games, it's because the computer started deciding, okay, this is how we're going to do things to try to protect humanity, and we're going to send out these nuclear bombs all over the world. And luckily it didn't happen. But this is what AI can possibly do. You had one of the top Google AI engineers, this professor, who left the company, and then he went on the news and said, this thing is a lot more dangerous than people believe. Things could happen. Then you had the CEO of Google, who went on not CNN, what's that show come on Sundays? 60 Minutes. And he said, I'm a little worried about some of these things. And all it takes is a few people with the dedication to say, what would I have to do to destroy the world? And so far, we've lucked out that no one has put something in there that doesn't have a kill switch indirectly to say, nah, I'm not giving you that information. Y'all don't need to know that. But we've had a whole lot of those super criminal movies and super criminal history things. You just never know. There's a lot. That's the last one I have. There's a whole lot of things that I sit back here sometimes and I'm like, man, we have gotten into a dangerous place in this world. Mainly in the United States. And I don't mind us trying to come up with new technology. I don't mind that someone decides, you know what, we need to strengthen our community. We want to feel safer and whatever. I don't mind that. But I do mind that you're doing some of that stuff and infringing on the rights of some other people and dumbifying, that's my word, dumbifying your children. And people don't like that. But most of the states that are banning books and are trying to kill history of the minority groups in this country, whatever, are in the bottom 10 in education. And that includes Florida and Texas. Because they want a dumb populace. So that you can keep electing smarter and even dumber representatives who represent you in the Senate and the House, in the federal government, and in your own states. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. On that particular point, I'm not necessarily going to say New York is any better than a whole bunch of other states, but at least we have not passed anything that takes away all of the rights of somebody. Yes, we have gun control, but that doesn't mean certain people can't buy guns. It just means, we got some rules. We got some rules. And I think that in certain circumstances, some of those rules need to be watched. But, people can buy guns in New York. But having a law that says you don't get to take a gun into the grocery store or the Walmart or whatever, certain places like that, I kind of like that rule. I liked the idea that I didn't always have to keep the spidey senses going and have to worry about, okay, that guy, his eyes are shifting all around, whatever. Can I get out of here quick enough? That's a terrible way to live. But that's my thought. I worry about stuff like that. I never worried about it in my 40s. So it's weird that I've gotten into my 60s and I'm worried about it now. But that's just how the world is. But those are my thoughts. Like I said, luckily, I still hit more than 20 minutes, but I think it kept that other video. If it hadn't been for the guys cutting the lawn, it could have been a 30-minute thing. Y'all try to let me know. Am I overthinking this? Do I really have anything to worry about? Or are there things here that you say, you know what? That's at least something we should consider. I don't know. Y'all let me know. My name is Mitch Mitchell. I wish you a good week. I wish me a good week too. Y'all take care.